Hello, BookTube. I'm Jonathan, and today I'm going to keep the intro short, and that's because we're going to be discussing short sci-fi book recommendations. And in order to do that, I have enlisted Bart from Bart's Bookspace. Bart, I got a question for you. If I were to
Shoot.
hand you a mystery sci-fi book, you got one or two options. All you know is that one is 200 pages, the other is 800 pages. Which one are you going to take?
Oh boy, you know what? I honestly, it would depend because I love to read short books. I
Hmm.
love ideas when they're compact, dense, and
Yes.
well quickly presented,
Hmm.
succinctly. But then sometimes you feel like reading a long book. And I'm reading not right now, but I am kind of in the middle of Stormlight Archive, for example, and I'm enjoying them as well. So it depends. But I think for a mystery, a shorter book would probably be my preference. Yeah, I would say shorter books.
Interesting. Well, if you are in the mood, and it does depend on your mood, because sometimes you
Mm,
might want to jump into an epic world, a
yes,
Sanderson-esque type universe. Sometimes you just want to focus on something tight, ideas, get to the point, do what sci-fi does best. Get rid of that annoying character development and world building and focus on the good stuff. So if
yes.
that's what you're in the mood for, you are in the right place. Even though I think if it's a free gift, you're probably getting better value for money with the 800-page book. Today, we're going to be recommending books that are 300 pages or less. That's the limit, the challenge that I have set for Bart. But hit me with your first short sci fi book recommendation.
Well, first of all, say your challenge. I knocked it out of the park easily
Oh,
because you said 300 pages. Every single book that I have is 200 or less. So
oh, I set the bar too high.
yes, indeed, these are short books, books that you could essentially read maybe in a day. If you're that sort of who has time to sit down and read a book in a
I
day.
like
I
it.
usually do not. I read at night. But before I get into my first choice, I just want to say that I'm really thankful to be here. I'm really excited to be
Awesome.
here because you were the first. You don't know this. You were the first booktuber that I subscribed to. I found booktube
Oh,
maybe two
yes.
years ago.
Let's
Yes,
go.
Jonathan. I found booktube maybe 2 years ago. I had no clue this part of YouTube, this corner existed, this amazing community also that now I'm a part of. But you were the first one. So this feels like kind of full circle because I have my channel now, right? And for my first,
That was the bell going off. That was the hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell.
exactly, exactly.
And we'll get those notifications silenced for you. But I really appreciate all those kind words, and I appreciate you joining me because I'm a big fan of your channel and your reviews. Although I'm a little nervous, you said we disagree on some things. Perhaps you've come here to air some grievances.
Oh, not at all. Not at
We will
all.
find out.
Not at all. I couldn't even remember what books we may part, on a little bit, but I'm sure there's been some. I mean, that's the amazing thing about books, right? That every single person is gonna view it through their own life experiences, what they've read previously. Some books you're just not
Hmm.
ready for, and I think some of my choices, for example, some of them may appeal to book readers who are newer to the genre, whereas others are probably books that you will want to have read a few science fiction books prior to reaching for these. But without a further ado,
Hit
let's talk
me.
about the first book. And this is on the easier side of science fiction, A Psalm for the Wild Build by Becky Chambers. Have you read any
Nice.
Becky Chambers books? I think you have.
I own her first book in the Wayfarers series. It's on my schedule for later this
Hmm.
year, but I haven't read any Chambers yet, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I've read a few, and this was the first Becky Chambers book that I read, and this is a great example of solar punk. So solar
Mm.
punk is a subgenre of science fiction um, that's on the other end of dystopian novels, and obviously there's so many amazing dystopian stories. I mean, I just read The Road recently, but years ago, The Stand blew my mind, and obviously 1984 Fahrenheit. There's so many of those amazing books. Solar punk needs a little bit more love in my opinion. There just aren't too
Okay.
many people who are optimistic about our future, I suppose. Um, well, I have kids. I hope our future is going to be amazing. And Becky Chambers paints a beautiful picture in this book, and this is book one in a series. It's called the Monk and Robot series. There is book two, which I read. I didn't like it as much. This is a book that you can read as a standalone when you're in the right mood, when you want something light, philosophical, but optimistic at its heart. This is a great choice. In this book, we are on a planet called Panga. Um, it's a stand-in for Earth. It's a beautiful, lush green planet, single continent that's divided
Ah,
in half. So humans occupy half of the planet. The other half is left up to nature. And there's
okay.
another little quirk there. Some time ago, humans did have robots, artificial intelligence, sentient robots, androids working for us. But these robots rebelled peacefully, said, you know what? We've had enough of you humans. Goodbye. We're going into the forest. We're going into the mountains. And humans let them go. And so no robot has been seen for centuries now by humans. And in this story, we meet our protagonist, Dex, sibling Dex, who is a T-Monk. You can see Dex on the cover there, and not his, Dex is actually non binary, so their little card. And what Dex does is Dex goes from town to town serving tea to folks who have problems, who have issues. So Dex pulls up with their card, and people will come to Dex asking for tea, and these folks will tell Dex their problems, and Dex, based on what they hear, will brew just the right type of tea. But guess what? Dex has problems of their own, and Dex,
Mm.
this internal turmoil, decides to go into the mountains to seek some sort of peace. Humans don't often go into the forest anymore, like I said. This kind of set aside for nature, but that's where the story starts because Dex meets a robot, Mascot. And Mascap is the name of the robot. This robot is super curious about humans, and they get into these conversations. It's funny at times, then it gets quite philosophical. Tons of amazing quotes. I'm not sure if Becky Chambers came up with every single one of them, maybe altered them slightly, but still, it's such a great fun read that will make you feel good. Now, if someone is looking for science fiction with spaceships and galactic wars, this isn't it. If you're a cynic, you're gonna be upset at this book. You're gonna be pissed off. It's too positive. It's too good. It's too optimistic. That would never happen. But if you're looking for something optimistic, positive, and a quick read, I think it's like 150 pages. This is a great book, and I recommend it. I think it's a fun read too.
That's awesome. I like how you contrasted it with some dystopian books because I know I made a couple of videos on some dystopian books last year, which I very much enjoyed. But after a while, I did feel like I needed a little bit of a break, something a little bit lighter. Something you
Yeah.
said about this book reminded me a little bit of the fantasy book that kind of took the world by storm recently, Legends and Lattes. This
Oh yeah.
sounds maybe something like a little bit similar, but instead robots and teacups. That might be
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
angle that this
Yeah,
book is
I haven't
taking.
read. I have not read Legends and Lattes, but I would think there is some truth to that. Um, and you know what? And this planet Punga, if I may, because I don't see Charlie anywhere, but Charlie is my favorite, and I think should you ever decide that Charlie needs a friend, I think Panga would be a great name for a companion. If you have another dog,
Ooh.
Charlie and Panga playing together. I have three dogs, so that's why I'm like we're like dog pushers. Adopt a dog.
I'll
Me and
throw
my
up a
wife.
picture of Charlie here. Do we vote in the comments? Does Charlie need a companion called Punga? Let us know.
Panga Panga. May I read just a little passage just to give a flavor of what the book is like?
Oh,
Becky
the
Chambers writing.
classic Bart passage reading. It
Mm,
would be our
yes.
honor.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So here Dex is talking to the robot and asking the robot whether robots are afraid of dying. Are you afraid of death? Of course, Moskap said. All conscious things are. Why else do snakes bite? Why do birds fly away? But that's part of the lesson too, I think. It's very odd, isn't it? The thing every being fears most is the only thing that is for certain. It seems almost cruel. So this is kind of gives a
Mm.
great example of what the book is like. At its best, it's the two of them talking philosophical issues like this, whether robots are afraid of death, what it means for them, and is it similar to what it means for us? It's a good book.
Very cool. All right. Well, I already own the first Wayfarer's book. I might
Yeah,
try that first, but it
that's a
does
good
sound
one to.
intriguing, and especially if I like that, I might have to pick up Sound for the Wild
Yeah,
Built
A
as
Long Way
well.
to a Small Angry Planet. It's a good one as well. It's fun.
Very cool. All right, but for my first short sci-fi book recommendation, and I
Hmm.
think you might be a fan of this one, I am going to go with,
Oh my
can you
God.
see that? The Futurological Congress by Stanislav Lem. So this was kindly sent to me by a subscriber, Spliff Tachyon. So thank you very much for the book. I really enjoyed Solaris by Stanislav Lem. Did I enjoy the Futurological Congress as well? Yes, yes, I did. So the premise for this one is it's kind of interesting. In the future, we have a group of people that are going to meet at a location in order to discuss the future of technology and society. But at this event, it is attacked by some people, some revolutionaries of a kind, and there is this conflict, and there's also some, I don't, how do I describe it? Maybe some tools of warfare that might affect people's mentality, their faculties in a way.
Hmm.
And so we follow this main character where after this event a number of strange things start happening to them. So it's a little bit surreal, a little bit like the opening of Solaris, but it also reminded me a little bit of Philip K. Dick. And so we kind of go on this fun journey of what exactly is real, what exactly is not real, what are the meanings behind each of these strange things that our main character is experiencing. And this book is only about 150 pages long, but I felt like every 10 or 20 pages, Lem introduced a new concept that was really thought provoking, either on a technological level or on a philosophical level. And I thought he brought the sort of weird storyline aspects together with the thought provoking things in a way that really stuck the landing. I was a big fan of this one, and but I know you are a fan of Lem. I know you've read Lem in the original Polish. So what do you think about the Futurological Congress?
So it's been a while since I've read the Congress, but I thought it was incredible. It's not my favorite
Mm,
Lem. It's not even my favorite Ian Tihe story because the protagonist of this book, does have a series of books in which he appears. Maybe
yes,
I think the Star Diaries would probably be the one that I would point to. But this one, I
interesting.
just thought I remember reading the book and thinking I'm being bombarded with ideas. So I think that what you mentioned resonates very much. I almost thought it was just too much, as if Stanisław Lem, who was a prolific writer, but an incredible. I thought he was a genius. Really, his ideas were really the way he looked at our future, the possibilities, just
Mm,
incredible. And he, in my opinion, was able to write different types of science fiction. Because to me, Solaris is a much different book than Futurological Congress. This one does read more like a PKD book, whereas Solaris is more of a maybe a little bit more traditional science fiction. Maybe reminds me a bit of, I don't know, Blindside in some ways.
mm,
Um, so he was someone who, I think, was really able to. And had he been writing, you mentioned the Polish part. If he was writing in English, I think he would be much more famous and perhaps be considered among the. I mean, he still is, but by broader audience would be considered by a genius. And many people in Poland felt and were saying for years, why does he write science fiction? He should write normal books. He should write about the Holocaust, for example, which he himself went through and almost lost his life
ah,
during. Yeah, he was up against the wall and just by this much was able to escape death. So they were
wow.
saying if he would have been a Nobel Prize laureate for sure if he was writing in a different genre than science fiction. Very interesting gentleman. Yeah,
Very interesting. Well, as a sci-fi fan, I'm glad that he chose to write science fiction. I've read
for
two of
sure.
his books now. I believe I gave Solaris a 9.5. I'm going to give the Futurological Congress a 9. And I was impressed both by the quality and how different it was, because as you mentioned, it is quite different to Solaris. This one has some quite dark moments, but it's also quite funny as well. It's quite humorous and
Yeah.
very surreal. So if I were to pick up another one, I was thinking of maybe picking up, I think it's called The Invincible. Do you think that's a good place for me to go to next with Lem?
Yeah, going to reading Invincible would be kind of like reading Solaris, going back in that direction. So
Gotcha.
less humor, more of a straightforward science fiction book, more of an idea based book that's more contained. Because I thought there were too many ideas thrown at you, almost
Mm,
stream of consciousness kind of writing, hallucinatory in some ways almost. Whereas Invincible, it's an interesting story about humanity's ego. Invincible is the name of a ship that they travel in, and they feel they're invincible. And it also tackles the consciousness issue, which always I think fascinates science fiction readers. What is
yes.
How does our consciousness relate to consciousness of perhaps alien beings, and could we understand, recognize, and so it's a very interesting book. I think Invincible, again, a short read. You could totally do it in a couple of days. It's a good one. The Siberia is a good one. Return from the Stars is an interesting one. And that one, he actually is the first one who came up with the idea of an iPad, or not an iPad, but an e-reader. So
Ah, very cool.
yeah, he's credited for coming up with the idea of many books on one device. That's in Return from the Stars. It's an endless,
Very
Star
cool.
Diaries, great read as well. You
Anyone that's
can't go wrong.
watching this video on a tablet, thank
Yeah,
you for watching, and you should thank Lem for coming up with the idea first. Very
yeah.
cool. Alrighty, Bart, what is your second short sci-fi book recommendation?
Well, this is flowing really nicely, I feel, because we kind of mentioned the author of my second book. But I'll just say, do you know, because this is something that I just read recently, do you know how many books are published, Jonathan, in US every year, including like self-publishing?
Oh, geez, that's a great question. I'll guess 500,000.
3 million. That's the
Okay,
number that
yeah,
I saw
wow.
anyway. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So that's a lot of books, and that's a ton of authors publishing. And I feel many of them, I'm sure, are great. And we both read many books by great authors, but not too many authors have a certain voice that really stands out. It's difficult, I think, to
Mm.
have that. Even a good story doesn't necessarily have an amazing voice. This author does. If you were to pick up a book that you didn't read and you didn't know who wrote it, if it's this author, you would probably by page three be like, I know. Some authors, of course, have that. Obviously, Cormac McCarthy had Hemingway famously, Toni Morrison. Some people may quote,
McCarthy would be easy. No, no,
yes,
no
oh,
periods, no commas.
well, exact. Kurt Vonnegut also. His books definitely by chapter two you would know that you're reading Kurt Vonnegut. I think with this gentleman, Jonathan, you would recognize his writing even if you never read
Uh,
a book. Philip K. Dick. I'm
the
talking about A
KD.
Maze of Death. A Maze
Okay,
of Death,
nice.
a very interesting story, packed with ideas, fun read, quick read. Uh, of course, it's a typical Philip K. Dick. Um, so it's crazy, it's wild, it's weird. It's the king of weirdness, I think, and he is in good form with A Maze of Death. In this book, we meet 14 strangers, and they meet themselves on a planet. Each one travels to this planet on an assignment, a job transfer. Each one of them gets there in this ship. I think they call it a noser. So it's a one-way ship that plucks you on the new planet, but you cannot use the ship to go back. The ship is done, essentially.
Okay.
So they don't know why they're there. Their job, their occupations don't seem to fit well together. There's like somebody who is a marine biologist, but there's no ocean or water there. So they're like, what the hell's going on? It's typical Philip K. Dick. Weirdness starts right away. These characters seem to be unlikable. And guess what? One by one, and this is not a spoiler, this is on the back of the book even, they start dying. So we have a little bit of like a mystery. We talked about mysteries before. Agatha Christie, maybe, and then there were non kind of vibes, which is maybe new for me anyway, to Philip K. Dick. Superior fun, just awesome stuff. It gets weird as they are trying to figure out what the hell's going on, who's trying to kill us, what's going on. You're trying to figure it out as well. It's fantastic, and you've got the weirdness. Just, I mean, offhand remarks that are thrown in the book. Again, in, like you said, classic fashion. I shall read a small passage from A Maze of Death
Perfect.
because I have next to it a little highlight, uh, and here it goes. The air as Glenn Belsnor sucked it in noisily, smelled bad, as if he thought the skins of dead dogs are drying somewhere on the line. What does that mean? There are no dogs. It's just Philip K. Dick. It's a perfect example of how weird this book is. I've only read 3 books by PKD. I think you have probably read more than I have. I read The Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. I read Ubik. And this one, I don't think this, if someone hasn't read PKD before, this may not be the easiest one. But for someone who has, but missed out on reading this, I recommend it. It's awesome. It's so much fun.
Very cool. So I
Yeah.
have read 6 books from Philip K. Dick, but that is not one of them. So I'm excited now because I do want to make my way further through his bibliography. I
Yeah.
have. I don't need to list them all. I've read 6. I own 2 more, but it sounds like I need to add Maze of Death
I
to the
think
list
so.
because
I think you
that
would really
sounds pretty
enjoy it,
cool.
Jonathan. I think you sorry to jump in, but I think you would really enjoy it. There's a lot about religion also in this book, which also Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep also Philip K.
Mm.
Dick tackles religion, but this here he does it in a very interesting way, and it's funny at times. So you got the mystery. It's funny. It's crazy. It's weird. I mean, there is a book like the Bible that they use. The title for the book is just incredible. I think it's like the title of the book is, I don't want to screw this up. Um, How I Rose from Dead in My Spare Time, and So Can You. It's just genius. I mean, this is laugh out loud funny. And Yeah, you have to read this one. I know you will at some point.
That's great. I like how PKD sort of blends the sort of like philosophical things with things to do with consumerism.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
kind of like that combination of serious and silly. I think he's, yeah, a rare talent with a unique voice, as you
for
said.
sure.
All right. Well, for my second short sci-fi book recommendation, I looked for a copy
Mm.
of it and I couldn't find it. It must be in Australia. So here's Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut. Even that's not the actual book. We'll have to just we'll edit it in. I'll put I'll put the real book cover over the book that I'm holding. My actual choice for today's video, even though I love Vonnegut, my actual choice for today's video is A Clockwork Orange by Anthony
Ooh.
Burgess. So this is a classic, but if you haven't read it already, the premise for this is that in the near future, we have a society which you have to read to find out whether you think it is utopian or dystopian. But we follow a teenage character named Alex who is part of an ultra violent gang. They go out at night, they go to milk bars, drink milk laced with various chemicals, and then they go out and commit acts of ultra violence. And so it's quite a hard book to read, both in terms of some of the graphic nature of the content, and also the language is very interesting because Burgess wrote his own slang for the book, which
Yeah.
incorporates some aspects of Russian. And I found it quite interesting, kind of working my way through those words and kind of feeling like I was developing a bit of a sense of that language, but can take you a little bit to get into. And the film, kind of by Stanley Kubrick, made this story quite famous, especially I think it's called the Ludovico technique. Essentially, Alex goes through a form of aversion therapy in order to try and prevent him from wanting to commit these heinous acts. And it's an examination of free will. You know, if you force someone to be good, are they really good? Or have
Mm.
you taken away their humanity by forcing them to do so, removing their free will? And this is a book that I think about fairly regularly. I still am not sure to this day, even having read it many years ago, I'm not 100% sure where I land on this book, how I feel about this book, whether I fully understand it, whether I fully agree with certain interpretations. So even though for me it's not quite on that top level of like an all-time favorite book for me, the
Okay.
fact that it has aspects that I'm still grappling with years later, to me says that there's something worth picking up with and trying it out for yourself to see if you have a reaction to it, because even if not everything fell into place for me, there's something there that I think makes it stand out and makes it worthwhile.
Interesting. So I have not read the book, but we started watching the movie years ago with my wife, and
Mm,
she couldn't take it. She could
yeah.
not continue. She just felt there was something. that she was nervous watching the movie. She was uncomfortable watching the movie, and so we just decided not to watch it. And I have not read the book, maybe because of that kind of negative experience that she had. But I do know that many people obviously love the book, and it's a famous. Also, I suppose it's, well, like you said, you would know. Is it dystopian? Is it utopian? Is it somewhere in between? Is it a sliding scale? But it is violent, right?
Yes, I would say, and that's why I guess some of the conflict has come from, because some people feel like the film maybe sort of glorified some of that violence, or made
Okay.
that violence entertaining, but then there's that question of, well, just because you depict something doesn't necessarily mean you're condoning what that is. So it's just something where, this is definitely not going to click for some people. Some people will bounce off this immediately, and I understand that. And then some people might sort of like grappling with their own sort of like, oh, I'm quite interested in these sort of atrocities. And what does that say about me? What does that say about society, that I'm so I it's elicited some sort of curiosity in me,
Yeah,
and is there some sort of worthwhile commentary there? So I think that's why it's kind of relevant so many years later, but it's still quite divisive.
interesting. I don't know where I heard this or read this, but just recently, maybe it must have been in a book that it's not enough for me to be happy. You have to be miserable.
Mm.
That kind of sentiment,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that seems to fit well with Clockwork Orange, perhaps, with this kind of mindless violence that the protagonist and the group is. I mean, that's vaguely what I remember about the part of the book that we watched uh, is um, is doing. So
There
yeah,
you
but
go.
I'm curious. I'm curious now to read it.
It's definitely
It
not
was on the
solar
list.
punk. It's although it might be good to read back to back. You can read something a bit heavier and then read something a bit lighter. They might be a good combo.
Yeah, because I think that's the great thing about reading books. Having that variety and reading across different. Even within
Hmm.
science fiction, there's so many subgenres and they're so amazing. And I can never stay in one corner too much. I love to kind of that ebb and flow from dystopia to from aliens to kind of more internalized feelings and books about our psychology and humanity in the future. Like I remember, I think recently you talked about More Than Human. These books are
Hmm.
so different. A book like Becky Chambers's story, Wayfarers and More Than Human, they could, and yet they fit into the umbrella of science fiction, and it's beautiful. I love it. Nothing like it.
It's a big, colorful umbrella that we are going to fill with two more recommendations. Bart,
Let's do
what
it.
is your third
I'll
and
go.
final
I'll
short
go.
sci-fi book?
I'll go quick. And this indeed, again, is a short book. I'm talking about Ice by Anna uh, Kavan. This is a devastating book. This is really a book that is very difficult to read. It's not a book that I recommend to everyone. And even in this short video, in the three selections that I've made, we've gone from solar punk to something that is quite, quite dark. This is a story of a man who searches for a girl, a young girl. It seems at times uncomfortably young, even in kind of an icy landscape in a world that is frozen in a post-nuclear disaster kind of apocalyptic scenario where everybody knows that the world is coming to an end. There is no hope. Nihilism prevails for sure with this book. It's the perfect, really perfect example of being as far away from solar punk as you could get with this book, both in the big picture, but also personally. I think the protagonist here is just a bad bad person, and the ideas that are presented here are make you uncomfortable. But the read is like nothing else that I've read, I think, in my life. It is so unique, so beautiful in the way it's written, the prose, the flow of the book, and I mean, we talked about Lem, how weird things got in the book you read, the Futurological Congress, how crazy PKD can be, but this is experimental. This is next step. You don't
Okay.
know what's going on. And I don't think a reread is going to help necessarily with Anna Kavan in this book. You still won't really know what's the reality and what is a hallucination, what is this dreamlike quality. But it's written beautifully. It's powerful. It's touching. It's again, it's chilling. It's just a book that I think anyone who is interested in challenging prose should pick up. I love the writing is really amazing. Anna Kavan did not write a lot of books. She's a British author who struggled throughout her life with heroin addiction.
Mm.
Um, and yes, that comes through, I think, in this book as well. A little bit of her, her story, and it's amazing. And if I may, again, just a small passage. This is really, really beautiful. Let's see if this is the one. She was a shimmer among the ruins, her hair glittering in the dark day. Her wide eyes of a wronged and terrified child accused me from the black holes of smashed windows. Like a perverted child, she ran past, soliciting me with her big eyes, tempting me with the pleasure of watching her pain, elaborating the worst imaginings of my desire. It's really beautifully written, but it's very uncomfortable. There are some passages
Mm.
here that I would not read in this video. Yeah, but it's a singular book and it's so unique that I think it's worth a try, and everyone should then decide if it's something that they can, um, you know, get along with. It's got a little bit of Kafka. I don't know if you've read Kafka. That kind of weirdness, but I think it's times 10. Kafka times 10. Kafka and heroin.
Okay, I like that. Interesting. So I haven't read this one. It's a book that I hadn't heard of until I think last year, and the people that have read it that I've seen found it to be very impactful. It
Yeah,
sounds like it's maybe an uncomfortable read, a challenging read, but one that might reward you for kind of pushing through that with some sort of thought-provoking concepts. Maybe best not read back to back with a Clockwork Orange. Maybe
yeah,
sandwich that with some cyber solar punk or some
yes.
PKD, but one that yeah, when I'm in the mood for it, I might have to add it to the TBR and give it a try because it does sound like a unique work.
It is. It is. It is unique, and I think you would enjoy it for that, if nothing else. It's not a book that I loved reading, but it's a book that I can't stop thinking about. It's that type of read.
Very cool. All right. Well, for my third and final short
I'm
sci-fi book
excited.
recommendation, it is, I wouldn't say it's all, I wouldn't say it's happy-go-lucky, but I'd say it's maybe a little bit lighter than our last two recommendations. And that is, well, let me take it to this side. Oh,
Hmm.
there we go. Get the angles right, Jonathan. Waystation by Clifford D. Simak. So, Waystation follows a farmer, a guy who is a bit of a recluse, lives
Okay.
on a farm. But it turns out that he's not just a farmer, he is the gatekeeper of an intergalactic way station, a way station for aliens that pop in and out on their travels. And so this book reminded me a little bit of John Wyndham's writing style. It's quite cozy. It's
Hmm.
very picturesque. It's very thought provoking. It's not action packed. It's not too wild on the sci-fi. It really dives into themes and what it means to be human and touches on aspects to do with um, war and society and relationships, and it has a uniquely American feel, though. It's very much like while John Wyndham kind of has that quaint British feel, this kind of
Yes.
has that sort of like country farmland Americana um, aesthetic combined with some sci-fi. So I found that to be a very interesting combination. I found Simak to be a beautiful writer, and he reminded me a little bit of Kurt Vonnegut. Not so much Kurt Vonnegut's sense of humor and absurdity, but the way that he kind of simplifies. He's able to distill into like short poetic sentences the ideas that he wants to explore, and I think was someone that was uh, just had great insights when it came to people. So if you want something that's on the softer end of the sci-fi spectrum, is maybe not super joyful, but is maybe a little bit of a cozier read than the last two things that we recommended, I would check out Waystation by Clifford D. Simek.
Well, so I'll say that Waystation has been on my well, I want to say TBR, but I don't have the book. I like to buy books in the wild. I don't like to order them online. I just find that if I start doing that, I'll just buy too many books, and I cannot do that. I can't afford to do it. So I've been looking uh, for Waystation for probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And when I do find it, I'll read it right away. I have read The City, um, and I've heard him described as a pastoral kind of science fiction writer, right? So
Yes.
that resonates. It's just the perfect scenario. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading him. And I did enjoy recently. I read The Day of the Triffids by Wyndham, and I did enjoy it too. So I'm definitely looking forward to finding and then reading. I feel like I'm on a hunt for these books, and it's exciting. And there's so many of them. But Way City is pretty high up on the list of books that I wish I could find in the wild.
Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed for you, Bart. I think it's very worthwhile. I really enjoyed City, but of the two, I liked Waystation the most. And I'll
Yeah,
definitely have to Simax 2 for 2, so I'm gonna have to try some more. But Waystation, one of my favorites. Under 300 pages, guys. We did it. I think
we
most of
did
them
it.
might have even been under 250.
Yeah,
We you passed the challenge with flying colors, but
thank you,
uh,
Jonathan.
we didn't get into any nasty fights. So I think you were right. We do have a similar taste in sci-fi. I feel like we seem to be on the same page today, which is nice.
I think so. I think so for sure. I know House of Sons. I mean, there's so many books that you enjoyed that I like as well. That yeah, for sure we have a similar style in our readings of science fiction, similar journey perhaps.
Awesome. Well, there you go. If you are a fan, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go check out Bart's channel. He's got a great taste in sci-fi. We agree on that. Jonathan approved taste in sci-fi has Bart, and vice versa, which I
Yes.
appreciate. Thank you, Bart. Well, there you go, Bart. Any final words before we tell people to click all the buttons?
Well, yes, 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 yes. Well, again, I just want to say thank you. This was a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to reading more science fiction and watching your videos, which are always a highlight. I try to get to them as soon as you post one. So I'm looking forward to that. And if anyone wants to check out my channel, I would love to have you. So yeah, just enjoying talking about science fiction books with everyone. This community is amazing, and Jonathan is number one in my book.
Oh, there you go. But contender for most complimentary guest. I appreciate it, Bart. I'm going to put the link to his channel in the description. And sci-fi is the best fi. So
Yeah.
check out some more videos on more sci-fi content. There we go. Over here.